Hello, I am doing the review for Quiz Access, Week 9, Chapter 5, question number 6. Everything I'm doing through Excel just to help to make sure I don't mess up when I'm typing in all my information. It helps me just stay consistent and then work through what's going on. So again, the Lopez company reported the following current year data for its only product. The company uses a periodic inventory system, and its ending inventory consists of 600 units, 200 from each of the last 3 purchases. So transferred all my information from the page here over into Excel. So total units, price in which the units were purchased, total cost at that price, to get my information sold across the board, and then just made a couple of notes. So total ending inventory is 600, and that's 200 per each of the last 3 purchases across the board. We're supposed to find out ending inventory costs for specific identifications, weighted average, first in, first out, last in, first out, and the cost of goods sold for each of those things. So one of the things I started off by doing is just building out a grid for the specific identifications based on ending inventory. So each of these dates account for this number. I anchor it just so I don't have to worry about pulling it down, and I know this comes for each 3 days. I can populate information to get 600. And then it allows me to go through, based on this ending inventory, how much we sold from there. So if I don't have any inventory left for the first 2 dates, then I could just transfer that information. Equals this date. And then for this report, it's basically the purchases that we've had. This equals total purchases minus 200 information left over. And from there, since this number is the same, I can click and drag it down to the bottom to find out that my ending inventory is 3,500. And then from there, I can equate cost of goods sold. So ending inventory multiplied by the total price per unit. It gives me cost of goods sold for each of these. And then ending inventory cost, this is whatever my total for ending inventory is multiplied by the price per unit. So this equals ending inventory times by price per unit. Obviously, we don't have inventory left over, but I could click and drag this down and it'll tell me that this 200 multiplied by the price of goods purchased on this particular time of day. Again, specific identification is accounting for each item purchased and sold as the breakdown that we have. So specific identification, ending inventory is 4,840. And cost of goods sold is this 26,536. For the weighted average, as I scroll up, still going off the same information, but the weighted average is the total cost of the purchases to get this weighted average per unit divided by the total units in which we purchased. So this equals this total cost divided by the total purchases sold, or purchased, not sold. Again, in the red, it says don't round intermediate calculations. So if you're not doing this on Excel and you get this calculation, I would put it up on a calculator and then save that total for future references. But if you have Excel, hopefully you can just leave this how it is. And then ultimately you'll be able to round your answers to 2 decimal points once we get these last 2 numbers. So before I can calculate my average cost of goods sold, I have to be able to know what my average ending inventory equals. So it's my ending inventory, which is the 600 number that we have, multiplied by the weighted cost per unit. So I know I have 600 left, and then multiplied by this average number. And that gives me my total ending inventory based on this weighted average cost per unit. 4591.61. And then from here, I can determine my cost of goods sold. For me, the easiest way to understand this is, well, I know how much my total costs were. If I subtract that by my weighted average ending inventory cost, then I can get my total amount. So this equals, okay, the total cost per goods subtracted by my average ending inventory. So 26, okay, wrong box, 26784.39. And then first in, first out. This is assuming that the items sold are in order in which they were purchased. So they have to be able to do either some mental math or some calculated math in order to acquire this information based on what we purchased here and kind of based on our understanding of this specific identification. So it just changes kind of where this ending inventory allocation is applied to. So because we're working on ending inventory, the easiest thing I can understand or kind of relate to myself is that if this final ending inventory is more or less than the total amount of the ending inventory we have left over, then I can really just subtract the total units I purchased for that last period of time. Sorry, the total ending inventory from the total units purchased that time. So my first 3 dates that I purchased all stay the same. And then from here, I can just say, well, my ending inventory or my total inventory sold in order to have 600 left over would be total units purchased minus or subtracted my ending inventory, which gives me 120. And then from here, my ending inventory is just applied to this unit today. So a good reference check for me, if this number adds up, then my totals for the bottom should be the same. So 3,500 and then 600 is my ending inventory. And then from here, calculate cost of goods sold by the purchase price of that unit. So 300 times $6. And because that'll stay the same, I could just click and drag this to the bottom. So it gives me total cost of goods sold. And then the only end inventory calculation I need to know is my remaining 600 multiplied by the cost in which I purchased those 600 units, which was the last run. So ending inventory is 5340. And then cost of goods sold is 26036. And then as we move up to this last in, first out, this assumes that the items sold are based on the most recent purchase to date. So it's the last unit we added to our inventory, but it's the first first item to be sold. So again, in reverse, as I'm going, instead of moving from the bottom to the top, from the top to the bottom, I'm verifying first whether or not I purchased enough units to account for my inventory. So that's not going to work out on this level. So units sold. For this report from the beginning inventory, as I sold all of them. So I sold through all of this starting inventory. And then I just have to be able to know what I have left over out of my units sold. So I didn't sell the starting inventory. I still have all of this starting inventory, sorry, because it's less than 600. So if I purchased 300, but I didn't sell any, and that 300 will go in my ending inventory result. And then from here, I know I have 300 left over. So if I have 300 left over here, that means I only sold 340. And then this number will equal my remaining inventory. So the first in, so the last is the last, or these are the last units to sell. These are the first units to sell. So if I'm selling this from the top to the bottom, it means I've sold all of this inventory up until these last weeks. So if I have 600 left over, just remembering that I have obviously 300 of this inventory and then 300 here. And then from here, I can do my calculations the same way I've done before. So this equals units sold multiplied by the price they cost per unit. I didn't sell any inventory, but if I click and drag this down, it will give me my totals. And then in reverse, same thing. This equals my total ending inventory multiplied by the cost per unit. So this is 3975 27401. So hopefully that answers some questions. I know I did a lot of information ahead of time, but just going through the calculations across the board. For me, this is just legit top to bottom inventory based on the result we have. This is a weighted average based on the average cost per unit. Everything else across the board will just balance out, not necessarily in an average form. First in, first out assumes that the items sold are in order in which they purchased. So I sold through my first units first, and then my remaining inventory is only accounting for the last inventory in my bank or in my warehouse. And then this is last in, first out. So I sold through the remaining of, or the beginning of my inventory. And then this is what I have left over based on our calculation of 600. And again, it helps to pre-populate this information and just go over your knowns. Good. So from here, the next question asks, I think I left it up. So yeah, so which method yields the highest net income? I selected first in, first out. The reason for that is net income is based on the amount you made off of your inventory minus the cost of goods sold. So the easiest thing for here is for me to figure out here is just, okay, which cost of goods was the one that yielded me the least amount that I would have to then subtract from my net inventory. So if my net inventory was the highest number, then obviously I want it to be my lowest cost of goods sold, which would allow me just to have the most or the highest net income across the board. So that's why I selected first in, first out. That's all I have. Anyone that has any questions, definitely reach out and I can help to answer them in the comment. Have a good day. Bye.